His 13-year-old stepbrother will serve 21 years behind bars. Jordan Nunez pled guilty for his role in the abuse that killed Jeremiah Valencia near Espanola in 2017. Nunez, his father, Tomas Ferguson, and Valencia's mother, Tracy Pena, tortured the boy for months, beating him, starving him, and keeping him in a dog crate. Valencia's body was found in a plastic tub in a shallow grave on the side of a road. Nunez's attorneys claimed he too was abused by Ferguson and was so afraid of him he went along with the abuse because he was afraid for his safety. But prosecutors argue he was old enough to know what he was doing and to stop it. Today, some of Valencia's family members asked a judge to hand down the maximum sentence of 24 years.
At the end of the day, he did not deserve it, and I just want justice for him. I feel like, they did this intentionally. They knew what they were doing.
In the end, the judge sentenced Nunez to 18 years for the abuse and 3 years for destroying evidence. Tracy Pena was sentenced to 12 years for her role. Tomas Ferguson killed himself.
He wasn't caught planting a bomb, and he wasn't caught firing a gun. Yet prosecutors insist he led one of the most dangerous dissident groups in Ireland, shaping decisions from the shadows with a confidence that unsettled even seasoned investigators. For more than 3 years, he has remained behind bars without a trial, his silence becoming as heavy as the allegations surrounding him, and each passing day adding new layers of unease to a case already shrouded in secrecy. His name, David Jordan, echoes through court documents and intelligence briefings, carried with the weight of leadership claims that no one has fully witnessed but everyone fears. The prosecution says they have enough to link him to the core of the new IRA. But the deeper this story goes, the more the boundary between fact and suspicion twists into something far more complicated. The decision to keep him locked up did not come lightly, because judges rarely deny bail unless something inside those files refuses to be ignored. And that leaves one question hanging in the air with chilling persistence. What exactly convinced the High Court that David Jordan cannot be released? Tonight, we uncover every detail, piece by piece, until the full picture finally comes into view. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dive case files like this one. Now, let's start at the beginning. The years between 2018 and 2023 shaped a climate of rising unease across Belfast, Derry, and Tyrone, because scattered incidents and whispered threats kept pulling security forces and dissident circles into silent collisions that rarely reached the headlines. These regions carried a tension that felt old yet unfinished, with every checkpoint, raid, and quiet gathering becoming another thread in a web authorities were desperate to map. During this time, the new IRA operated in the shadows, a group built from fragments of older movements, driven by an ideology rooted in resistance and guided by a loose hierarchy that investigators struggled to fully understand. David "Davy" Jordan stepped into this environment as a familiar face to those who monitored dissident activity, a man whose associations drew attention long before any charges were announced, and whose presence at certain events raised quiet questions. He was known within these circles not for public speeches or dramatic gestures, but for the steady confidence of someone comfortable moving in contested spaces where beliefs, strategy, and loyalty intertwined. Prosecutors later alleged that he held roles far deeper than public knowledge suggested, accusing him of directing terrorism, belonging to a banned organization, and chairing the new IRA's so-called Army Council. The day he was detained marked a turning point, not because of a dramatic chase or a violent clash, but because investigators believed he had attended key strategy meetings that shaped the group's direction. They claimed he traveled abroad seeking links that could strengthen the organization, and this allegation alone sent a ripple through intelligence files already thick with unanswered questions. His remand stretched past 3 years, a period marked by repeated legal challenges, each one ending with him remaining behind bars as the case grew heavier. Beyond the courtroom, the political climate tightened as dissident Republican groups and police continued their uneasy dance. Each step watched closely by MI5 teams monitoring patterns that ordinary people never saw. Authorities widened their crackdown, pulling in documents, redacted reports, and timelines that stretched across walls like a shifting map of intentions and alliances. And as these pieces built toward something larger, investigators insisted that this case reached far beyond simple membership, hinting that what they uncovered next would change everything. Where are you watching from? And drop your location in the comments section. The case shifted into deeper territory when prosecutors laid out what they called leadership-level evidence, pointing to reported meeting notes where Jordan was allegedly heard referring to himself as chair during strategic discussions. They claimed these sessions captured moments where he guided conversations, shaped priorities, and asserted authority in ways they argued matched the behavior of someone directing organizational direction rather than simply attending. Alongside this, threads of surveillance and suggestions of informant activity were woven into the prosecution's narrative, each hinting at a network quietly feeding details into intelligence files. But the courtroom grew tense when defense lawyers countered that no recordings showed him planning attacks, no images tied him to weapons, and no physical evidence placed him at the scene of violence. They questioned whether the state was leaning too heavily on individuals whose credibility might fracture under scrutiny, arguing that long-term remand had become a substitute for proof. The prosecution pushed back, insisting that leadership itself carried danger, claiming his release could allow him to reorganize and strengthen the group in ways too risky to gamble on. Investigators also pointed toward fractures within the new IRA, describing internal divides, shifting alliances, and quiet power struggles that shaped how influence moved through the organization. They said Jordan's alleged role placed him near the center of these tensions, a man positioned where strategy, loyalty, and authority met in a group already marked by instability. In this landscape, he was portrayed as someone whose absence or presence could tilt the balance of internal control, intensifying the weight of the accusations against him. The prosecution then moved to the co-accused, presenting overlapping meetings involving Kevin Barry Murphy and others whose names appeared repeatedly across their timelines. They outlined financial trails, seized electronics, and encrypted communications they argued formed a shadowy web of operational links, with special attention on a trip to the Middle East that prosecutors claimed was meant to seek alliances. As these points added pressure to the defense, the court was left facing a moment the prosecution said could not be ignored, setting the stage for the explosive revelation that would follow next. The courtroom shifted into complete stillness when prosecutors presented what they called the critical evidence, unveiling recordings they said captured Jordan inside meetings where strategy, structure, and direction were openly discussed. They highlighted statements from co-accused individuals who allegedly identified him as the figure chairing these gatherings, claiming he described himself as part of the Army Council's leadership tier. The judge listened closely as each detail was laid out, absorbing a narrative that emphasized public safety concerns and the significant influence prosecutors argued he held within the organization. Families stood outside under a gray sky as news filtered through the halls, their expressions carrying the weight of a label that now stretched over every aspect of Jordan's life. Inside, the reality of spending more than 3 years behind bars without trial added a deeper pressure to the moment, turning the accusation from mere allegation into a force that shaped the emotional gravity of the case. The courtroom felt heavier as the judge prepared to deliver a decision that would ripple far beyond the wooden benches and stone walls surrounding him. Then came the declaration that changed the room entirely, a firm and echoing statement: "Bail is refused." That struck both legal teams with a mix of shock and resignation. Lawyers looked at each other with the tension of people who had expected a difficult outcome, but still felt the sting of hearing it aloud, knowing this decision locked the path forward into an even more complex legal battle. Outside, reactions spread quickly, with supporters and critics expressing disbelief, frustration, and concern as the case tightened its grip on public attention. Prosecutors soon pointed to the broader intelligence web behind the scenes, referencing MI5 summaries and patterns of dissident activity that had unsettled political leaders across the region. They drew comparisons to older, high-profile cases from past decades, using history as a lens to show how leadership allegations had shaped public perception before. This moment cemented the prosecution's narrative, set the stakes for the coming trial, and shifted the entire tone of the case. Yet even with bail denied, the story was still far from over. Jordan remains imprisoned as the legal machinery moves slowly toward a future trial, with the court's final ruling on bail leaving no room for reconsideration and setting a firm boundary on how the case will proceed. The decision outlined that the risks identified were too substantial to permit release, tying the next steps of the process to long-form hearings, procedural reviews, and a timetable that stretches uncertainly into the coming months. This means every legal turn ahead will unfold with him still behind the walls of the remand facility, shaping the path forward with a sense of waiting that has already lasted years. In the communities watching closely, the case has stirred tension that blends old resentments with newer fears, leaving some residents anxious about the possibility of renewed dissident activity, while others question the intentions of ongoing security operations. Public conversations have grown louder, with people trying to understand what the allegations mean for stability and how the political landscape might shift if dissident groups feel cornered or energized. Elected representatives have stepped forward to express concern, hoping to ease anxieties but also acknowledging that cases like this tend to deepen divides rather than close them. For families connected to the case, the emotional strain is heavy and constant, shaped by the knowledge that years of delays have become part of their daily reality and cannot be undone. Each court date brings hope mixed with frustration, and the long-term remand has affected how many view the justice system itself. Some seeing caution, others seeing unfairness. These private battles contrast with the public spectacle, reminding everyone that beyond headlines and legal arguments are people carrying weight that rarely shows on cameras. Yet even with all this information, mysteries remain, and the strength of the state's evidence is still a question that no courtroom has fully tested, leaving observers trying to predict what the trial will ultimately reveal. Many want to know which pieces of the prosecution's narrative will hold under cross-examination and which gaps in the filings might grow larger once the defense begins its full challenge. And historians already see this case as part of a larger pattern, comparing it to previous moments when alleged leadership roles were put under intense scrutiny, raising questions about how the new IRA's structure might evolve as this case continues to unfold. The story now reaches the moment where the audience becomes part of the unfolding case, because after years of investigations, legal arguments, intelligence briefings, and emotional strain on every side, the biggest question remaining is what the public truly believes about this complex situation. This is where we turn directly to the viewers and ask the questions that matter most, inviting everyone to step into the conversation that continues to shape this case at every turn. Do you believe the court was right to deny bail, knowing the weight of the allegations and the years of remand that have already passed? And with everything presented so far, from leadership claims to intelligence assessments, do you think the evidence actually proves that David Jordan held a directing role inside the new IRA? Or is there still too much uncertainty to draw a firm conclusion? The final questions stand like an open door, encouraging viewers to share what they feel still needs to be uncovered, because this story is layered with unanswered details that only a full trial might reveal, and your thoughts help guide which part of the investigation we should explore next. What aspect of this case do you want us to investigate further? The intelligence methods, the organizational dynamics, the motivation behind the alleged meetings, or the broader political implications that continue to ripple across communities? The discussion is not just welcome. It is necessary, because public voices shape how stories like this are remembered and understood. So take a moment to gather your thoughts and step into the comment section with your perspective. Now comes the full, detailed call to action exactly as outlined, inviting viewers to shape the documentary's next steps with their engagement and support. Comment your theories below, especially your thoughts on the bail refusal, the evidence, and the unanswered questions surrounding the case. Subscribe if you want the full trial breakdown when it begins, because everything presented so far is only the beginning, and the next phase will be even more revealing as long-hidden pieces finally reach the courtroom. Like and share this documentary to help more people understand the depth, history, and complexity behind this case, and to bring attention to the broader issues surrounding long remand periods, dissident activity, and the legal battles that continue behind closed doors. As this final act closes, one truth remains firm. This story is still developing, and the next chapter may be the most important one yet.